see the same people every other day, but we never say hey, 'cause we're never looking the way, or my face was in my notebook. We passed each other, didn't look. But these are the people of the towns, of the towns, the towns, of the towns. And large cities are just a bunch of big small towns, big small towns, overlapping side by side, big small towns. I see new people every day. Everyone's on their way, doing the things that fill their day. And I'm going places too, doing the things that I do with my time. We are the people of the towns, of the towns, the towns, of the towns. And large cities are just a bunch of big small towns, big small towns, diagonal, top to bottom, big small towns. Be nice to the people of the towns. Once in a while look around, 'cause what's going around's coming around. What came around's coming around. What's going around's coming around. Big, 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 small towns. Word gets around in the big small towns. Big, 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 small towns. Word gets around in the big small towns. Big, 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 small towns. Word gets around in the big small towns.
All right, everybody, welcome to Downballot. We usually do the show live Tuesdays, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. This week, we're taking a week off of the Tuesday live show. So this is just a pre-record regular podcast, just like the old days, although our remote setup is far superior to the old days. Our old remote setup was a phone system. Please follow this on your podcatcher of choice and make sure you're following us over there on Twitch, twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. And maybe get yourself a Downballot coffee mug in our swag shop. That's eplex.store. Downballot coffee mug is only $12. And if you use the promo code NOWSPACE, that's capital now dash capital space, all caps, you get 10% off. And then we don't make any money on the coffee mug, but you get the coffee mug. I am producer Dave. You can find me on Grindr. You can usually find me live here on Twitch. You can find me on Twitter, but you'll have to find that yourself. And also patreon.com/Echoplex. We had a new patron this week, so we're pretty stoked on that.
Sweet. This is the Councilman. You can find me on Twitter at THE_Councilman, or you can find me getting basic here on Downballot every Tuesday night, usually live at 7:30 p.m., followed by Local Love. Stay tuned for Greatest Hits Local Love package tonight as we're going non-live variety this week. But really excited to be here for you, listener. Really hope you continue to download this podcast and share it with your friends, and join us on Twitch, because the live show is so much fun. You get to interact with us and talk shit about all the derp that we're slinging, and there's plenty of local derp to go around usually on Downballot. That's why we're here. That's why the show exists. So please share it. And again, all derp is local, so it's not just about Bay Area. If you have any local political derp you want to throw our way, you'd like us to cover, take a look at, please do. And we're not afraid to take a little sojourn, a little trip to your neck of the woods and do a whole show around your locale. So please, if you have like a thread of nastiness happening, we want to hear about it. We want to know about it. We want to take a look at it. So
that's right.
Looking forward to another great night with you.
That's right. So what do we got for leading off this week?
That's a great question. Well, there have been some polling recently, and apparently Bay Area residents aren't feeling very excited about being in the Bay. So we're going to hear more about that. And apparently they did a live report from a local city that has its finger on the pulse of the Bay Area.
People in the Bay Area are feeling more pessimistic about their future here than they did last year. A new poll published today in the Mercury News found many feel like we're headed in the wrong direction. NBC Bay Area's Marianne Favreau took the temperature of folks in Campbell tonight and found there is at least one bright spot.
And that one silver lining is a byproduct of the pandemic. In a new poll of Bay Area residents, 67% say working from home has given them more control over their lives. Judy Goldman works from home and says she's enjoying the benefits.
A balance, being able to take short breaks, go out in nature, be with my dogs, to have the quiet.
But the poll by the Bay Area News Group and joint venture Silicon Valley found few other bright spots in residents' outlook. More than half of people living in the Bay Area called crime an extremely serious problem. Another big concern, the rising cost of housing.
Because I grew up here, down the street, and it's hard to even fathom buying a house here right now.
He's not alone. The survey found 66% of renters say they worry they can never afford to buy a home. Homelessness was another top concern.
I think in a country as well off as we are, there is no excuse for homelessness ever. It should not be a situation.
And the worries don't stop there. 82% say they're concerned about the threat of wildfires. And 6 out of 10 people surveyed said they felt the Bay Area is on the wrong track. That, too, is up from last year. The question now is what can be done to help people in the Bay Area feel more optimistic about living here? That's something you can bet Bay Area business leaders and elected officials will have to address. Drought was also a concern echoed in the survey, and one echoed when we talk with people here tonight. In Campbell, Marianne Favreau, NBC Bay Area News.
So the only reason people think crime is a problem is because local news stations, for example, keep telling you about crime, but they don't ever tell you that the overall trend from the mid-90s to now has been downward, especially on violent crime. They never, ever, ever tell you that.
Correct. They just cover the next violent crime that they can find, right? The next murder, death, kill, and they don't put it into context at all, right? Other than to say, oh, well, we're approaching X number of whatever murder, death, kills this year or something, which is a such percentage, whatever, higher or lower than last year, right? But as you said, on the whole, I absolutely love this piece, particularly Mr. Sharps, the gentleman from Campbell that they found, who's probably waiting to get seated at a key or some place down there. He said, he says the refrain that I've heard so many times that I wish I had a nickel for every time I've heard it because I'd be a freaking rich person, and I would buy all the housing to house everyone. He says, in an area as affluent as ours, there's no reason why we can't figure out how to house people, right? And how to solve homelessness, right? I guarantee you, Mr. Eric Sharps, I guarantee you he is first in line at public comment when the proposal is to build a tiny homes community or a sanctioned encampment or affordable housing or supportive housing in his neighborhood in Campbell, right? Behind his house, right? He's first in line to say, no, not appropriate here. Don't put that here. I'm supportive of housing our neighbors, but not in my neighborhood, right? Every time I could guarantee he's there first in line, and he's not alone. And it's a very common refrain. Like I said, I'd be a rich person, so it gets me kind of sick to hear that. But yeah, it's an issue. It's absolutely an issue, and there is no reason. He's right. There is no reason why we shouldn't be able to figure that out. But it's because of people like him that we can't, and that's the disgusting thing.
Not for nothing though. Out of the places in the South Bay, Campbell is the one place that hasn't shied away from density. Like it's
True.
It's I think it's denser. It's certainly denser than San Jose, and
I don't know how it compares like overall, right? Like there's certainly areas of San Jose, like downtown, that are denser, but you're right. I think in terms of pulling your fair share, like pulling your weight, right? I think Campbell has certainly done that and is doing that. Whereas cities like Saratoga, where their first speaker or quote was from, right? She was in Campbell, but she's from Saratoga. They are not necessarily doing that. Like Saratoga actually has an ordinance prohibiting any building over like 2 stories, I think, or 3 stories in their downtown, right? Which pretty much means anywhere in the city. So you're pretty much limited to 2 stories no matter where you are in Saratoga. So there's no density happening in Saratoga, period, by law. Los Gatos is similar, doesn't necessarily have that draconian of a law, but yeah, I think Campbell, San Jose, cities like that, Milpitas, are pulling their weight. And other cities do need to step up. Mountain View has been doing a decent job, I think. But yeah, there's certainly some areas around the periphery of the valley where we need to have more support. Anyway, but more to come on this. It's obviously a greater issue. I'm not necessarily surprised that folks are feeling pessimistic. Like, it's frustrating living in the Bay Area sometimes with the cost of living, what it is, and just the lack of economic mobility. It's absolutely frustrating for a lot of people. I don't know that Campbell necessarily has its finger on the pulse, but but more so than other spots, let's just say.
Yeah, I don't, I think when they do these things, it's always very general, right? Some of the people are just we're going in the wrong direction. A lot of times it's implied that everybody agrees when they say that, we're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
But, those 60%, 6 out of 10 or whatever said the Bay Area is going in the wrong direction. Well, 2 out of 10 might think that it's too liberal. 3 out of those 10 might think the cost of living is too high. And then 1 of those people might think that crime is too high. And so It's like, they're not just because 6 out of 10 think it's going the wrong way doesn't mean those 6 out of 10 or whatever are going to all agree with one another. And it's often presented as if people, they don't say it, but they don't ever bring up that there are a wide variety of reasons that people might believe that the Bay Area is going in the wrong direction.
Right. And I actually have started to respond to polls. I get texted poll links quite a bit now. So mayoral race in San Jose and other state races, right? And there's always a question about, do you feel the state, city, county, whatever, are on the right or wrong track? And it's a yes or no question. And to me, it's like, that's a really nuanced question. Like, I could say, yeah, we're on the right track with some things and we're completely off the rails on other things, right? As a city or whatever. So there's a lot of nuance to it. You're right. And it's really hard to answer that question. And it's kind of like a lame question anyway, right? It doesn't really probe or get at any sort of deeper issue. It's just sort of like, how you feeling, right? And when you're asked, we all ask each other, how you doing? When, we see each other, right? It's sort of like a greeting. A friend of mine pointed this out to me yesterday. It's not so much like a question or actually a legit, concern or inquiry. It's really just another greeting, like, yo, what's up? Right? What's up? How you doing? And we all say sort of fine, or, I'm good, the dude abides, right? When in reality, the majority of the time, maybe not all the time, but the majority of the time, we're not fine, right? We might be really good and we might be really, really bad. But we just say fine because, we don't really think about it.
Right. You never
get
get
this poll.
When you say how you doing to somebody, you never get, well, kind of dragging ass today, actually.
Yeah, right. Like, I feel like
I'll
shit,
tell you
actually.
that.
Let me tell you about it. Yeah. Let me tell you about it. I feel like absolute ass. You don't get that. And that's what this poll question gets you. It gets you the I'm fine. I guess they're on the right track. I guess we're on the right track. I don't know, but whatever. It's the whatever answer. So we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. I'm curious to see how this plays out over time in our elections, especially too. This kind of sentiment, and see if it does have much of an impact. 'Cause I think that's the kind of sentiment that you start to hear, and it leads to apathy and it leads to lower turnout, right, in elections. So let's see if that tracks.
So what do we have first in winners and losers?
Well, we have a winner. I'll give you that. I think that the subject of the story is a winner. The whole situation sucks, and it sucks that she's had to go through such trauma to become a winner. But there is a winner here, and I wanted to make sure that we had a winner story. But this is about a success, somewhat of a success story in our attempts to house our unhoused neighbors.
Today was deadline day for San Jose to clear out a sprawling homeless camp beneath the Mineta Airport flight path. Now, we went by the Spring Street site today, and as you can see, it is completely empty. The FAA says it was just too dangerous for people to live there. And of the 250 people who did, the city says more than 170 have been placed into housing. KPIX5's Len Ramirez followed one formerly homeless woman as she transitioned into her new life.
One of the losers is the tech team on this story.
Okay, here's your water. Take as many sandwiches as you want.
Spend a few minutes with Kelly Goodman, and it's clear she cares about the people she's serving.
Hola, gente, ¿cómo estás? Bien, ya? Ya? Es buena comida hoy. And yes, I speak my bilingual.
She cares because it wasn't too long ago that she was one of the people being served.
I was homeless for 19 years. And it gets depressing. It's the worst thing anybody could ever imagine.
I first met Kelly months ago when she was living out of her minivan.
So there's not enough beds, not enough housing.
Turns out that while we were talking that day, her own paperwork was moving through the county's Office of Supportive Housing.
Here we go.
And you're about to see what happened next.
Driving home.
What's it like to be able to say that?
Brings tears to my eyes. Let's go home. Want to go home? Let's go home. That's right.
After almost 2 decades on the streets, Kelly and her dog Poppies are going indoors.
Come on, baby.
They got a studio apartment in Willow Glen. We were not allowed to film inside the building, but Kelly sent along these photos of the spacious studio and private bath. But for someone like Kelly, the transition into safe and stable housing is not as easy as it looks.
It was a shell shock at first. I was absolutely unprepared for the total change in lifestyle. The quiet. You don't hear gunshots and you don't hear people fighting and you're not worried about if there's a fire next door, you're going to lose everything, or rats, or, I don't worry about that. It took me, about a week to get, okay, this is what normal people, this is how they live. Oh my goodness, I'd almost forgotten.
Kelly was identified and prioritized for housing assistance through a system called VI Spidat.
And it's a tool, it's an assessment tool that every community uses within this area to help triage the most urgent and vulnerable needs for participants.
Abode, the nonprofit which is housing Kelly, says dozens of the most vulnerable people on the streets are being housed every month in Santa Clara County.
Folks are continually being placed in housing, but oftentimes if we place one person in housing, another 3 are experiencing homelessness within the course of that same day.
You want a bag? Want some food?
Which is why Kelly returns to her old camp at least twice a week. She's found that helping her former neighbors is just the therapy she needed to help her adjust to her new life.
I come out here to give them hope, to let them know that if I can do it, anybody can do it. Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you.
In San Jose, Len Ramirez, KPIX5.
Kelly's new apartment is a temporary placement, and she does pay an adjusted rent. She and her service providers are working on a plan to move her into a permanent place. Well, not everyone was as lucky as Kelly. About 100 people from the Spring Street camps shifted over to nearby Columbus Park. And what was once an empty baseball field is now filled with RVs and cars, but they won't be able to stay there for very long. The city has given them until mid-November to go somewhere else.
Great. How magnanimous of the city.
Yes. And the city can talk about, oh, well, we've got deadlines of our own to deal with and blah, blah, blah. A lot of it's actually around funding. The FAA, this encampment is in the airport flight path, and the FAA basically pays gives San Jose grant funding or funding to basically keep the land vacant for safety reasons, quote unquote. And so San Jose is using that as a reason to expedite, the clearing of the encampment, because the FAA has given us a deadline to clear it. So therefore we have to clear it. Otherwise we lose our FAA funding. And I would just tell the FAA to go fuck themselves personally, but that's me. I'm not a council member nor the mayor, much as my Twitter moniker might say otherwise. Doesn't really get me anywhere. They don't listen to my 26 followers. So yeah, it's a lose-lose situation for a lot of folks. It is true though. People like Kelly have been rehoused, and we have had a lot of success stories. It's just that, as they say, more folks keep experiencing homelessness than we can house. So, but good on her, and good on her getting a spot in Willow Glen. I'm sure that was a struggle to get that wherever she's being housed, right? I'm sure it's not in the heart of Willow Glen. I'll bet you it's at Willow Glen adjacent, but wherever she's at, I have a pretty good idea where. It was probably a struggle with the neighborhood to get it built in the first place. So, good on her. And I'll take a sandwich any day. Those look good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't stop by. I don't need the sandwich, so I would not take a sandwich from there. I would not take food from. But if there was extra, yeah, I'd take a sandwich. Like everybody else.
If she was going to throw it out, you know. Yeah.
If everybody else had eaten, I'd be like, fuck yeah, I'll try a sandwich.
Right. Well, that was the thing. It's interesting. The approach that they take. I volunteered just like one time. I've volunteered many times in meal kitchens, soup kitchens, and they will absolutely, like, the proprietors, organizers, supervisors will always offer you a meal for yourself to take home, right, when you volunteer. And it's the most awkward moment ever, because I can absolutely afford, to pay to feed myself. I have plenty of food at home. If I go home, I can cook myself my own dinner. And yet it's like that's just not how they think. They just think no questions asked. If you're hungry, you want dinner here, have dinner. We've got it.
If the day's over and there's still food left, they're not gonna.
That's true. They don't want to waste not want not.
Yeah, they're gonna throw it away. And like, why wouldn't you? Because you just spent all day working to feed other people. Why not?
Right.
Use some of that food and some of your own labor to feed yourself, especially if you're like single or whatever. If you have a family now, but if you're single or whatever, hell yeah.
Oh, I definitely brought a meal home for my pregnant wife last time I volunteered. So, no, yeah, absolutely. It's not like I don't take advantage of it either. If you're going to offer it, I don't like to waste not, want not. But yeah, at the end of the day, I just never want to feel like I'm taking something off of someone else's plate, right? Anyway. Good on Kelly. Bad in the city, bad in the FAA. Let's get some shit done for people. Bad on the NIMBYs for not letting us build more of these tiny homes and affordable housing. Like we even had just recently, right? We had a story about another neighborhood bitching about tiny homes coming to their neighborhood, right? And they park it in. Oh well, it's a park. It's parkland. It's future parkland, so we can't have temporary housing here, right? But it's really because they don't want the housing period.
Well, I mean, It seems to me the solution. The solution is the housing projects. That's it. That's the solution is government housing projects. The problem is, and I've said this a million times, the problem is what happened on the East Coast with housing projects is the problem. That these projects were built, when they were first built, they were just like any other apartment complex. There may have been things that were less expensive. They weren't like a luxury apartment complex, but they were a normal apartment complex. And then because poor people lived there, the city that was supposed to be the city or the county or the state or whoever it was that was supposed to be keeping these places in good repair, that kept going down their priority list. And then all of a sudden these were shitty places to live because nobody was maintaining them. They weren't getting a fresh coat of paint every once in a while. If you moved into one, was there still carpet? I don't know. Was there originally carpet? They weren't being like remodeled, reworked like a regular apartment.
Leaks. Yeah.
And so they end up being the ghetto. And so
the
now
projects, right?
Right. And then people, and so people associate these places with like horrible squalor and bad living conditions. And then instead of being like, boy, it would have been nice if the state of Maryland or whatever would have kept these places up, and we're California and we can do this and we can do it right. It's like they blame the people who live there, essentially. Blame the people who live there, the poor people who live there, because the people who had the money and had the ability to maintain the place didn't. As a renter, it is not your job to do maintenance on the property.
In fact, you're usually prohibited from doing maintenance on your own property, in your unit, even
insurance reasons. Yeah, they don't want you. Right. They don't want you. They don't want you fixing things there. And there's places where people have deals with their landlords or whatever, but that stuff's usually bad anyway. Best advice to anybody: any maintenance is needed, call the landlord and call them now. And if they don't do it, start calling other people. Start calling the city, the county, be like, hey, the landlord here ain't maintaining my property. The problem problem there in public housing becomes you're calling the county. Well, you're calling the county on the county, or you're calling the city on the city, or you're calling the county on the city, or the city on the county. And it's Big Brother. It's the government there, and it's just so messed up what happened with all the housing projects, and it just ruined the idea of public housing. Whereas in other countries, European countries, there are, I think in the UK, you can get public housing, and it's just an apartment. What are they called? Council flats or whatever? Is that what is that what that is? I think that's what it's called, where it's like subsidized by the government. I know they do it in Northern Europe. In Germany, they have public housing. France, they have public housing. And it's nobody's looked down upon if they live there. It's just a place to live if you're a working person. And here in America, we fucked it up. We fucked it up so bad in New York, Baltimore, Chicago, and a place like the Bay Area. Maybe we could do it right, but we'd probably fuck that shit up here too.
Yeah. Well, we are doing it. I mean, the government subsidizes housing all the time. Like, we're building housing constantly. And all of us just passed a bond in our county recently for like almost $1 billion to spend on housing projects. But the situation is it's not the county or the city that's your landlord here. Almost every situation here, it's a nonprofit. It's a nonprofit that the city is partnering with. This is absolutely not to badmouth nonprofits at all. It's a nonprofit the city is partnering with and gets into a relationship with to manage the property, right? Because the city doesn't want to get in the habit of being property managers, for good reason. However, some nonprofits better than others at maintaining their spaces, right? And like, just as with the projects on the East Coast, one of these developments, one of these projects, gets into some disrepair. One of the nonprofits neglects their duties, and all of the others are spoiled, and all the other future projects are spoiled with the community, right? Because that just keeps getting run over and over and over again, like the violent crime on the local news that gets run over and over and over again, even though there's not an ongoing concern. And suddenly everyone's turned against what are actually really reasonable, really nice, in some cases, really, really nice projects, like places with dignity where you would want to live, right? Where you would not be afraid to like have your grandmother or your mom go live, right? Really nice places. But a few bad apples, of course, spoils the public perception. And so you get that blowback.
And not for nothing, the public perception isn't like, well, this sucks that these people have to live in this place. The public perception is this is an eyesore. And that's like, okay, sure, maybe it's an eyesore, but that's not the actual problem. Like, the actual problem isn't that you think it's ugly. The actual problem is that someone's living there and their shit isn't getting repaired.
Right. Or more, a lot of times what happens is there's just not a lot of property management going on live, and so you end up with there's tenants who are engaging in some shady shit, and drug deals happening outside and shit going down in and around the place. And that happens in any city, right? In any development, whether it's affordable housing or home supportive housing, whatever, Section 8 or not.
Gated communities.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
But nobody even notices it because like somebody drives up, enters the code, drives their Maserati into the gated community, drops off a big pile, or just drops off a big pile of dope to the middleman who happens to live in the gated community.
100%. Yeah, but it's not out in the open. It's certainly not brown people. It's all the Tony White blonde people. So yeah, that's exactly what goes down, and it makes it every time it happens, and every time one of these projects, quote unquote, fails, it just makes, or not fails, but just it comes up a little short or causes some ire, then it just leads to problems and more struggle getting new projects online. And one of the mayoral candidates right now is making a big deal out of like government doesn't get things done fast enough or efficiently enough. And it's like, well, bro, guess what? Like, government has to respond to the people, right? And if you have to do a better job of bringing the people along and getting them on board with this shit. All you're doing is fanning the flames, right? Fanning the flames. And then you say, oh, well, government can't get shit done. We can't get enough housing in our community. Well, guess what? You're the one going on Twitter and Facebook and with online ads, getting people all afraid of violent crime and the safety of our city being at risk, and weren't telling people we need to force people to accept the housing options that we give them, right? You're part of the problem and the solution at the same time. You can't. It's not possible.
And not for nothing. Like it's not like crime doesn't happen on streets with a bunch of single family homes where most people are homeowners and stuff. But you don't ever hear cries for, well, let's get rid of the single family homes because there were 2 drug busts on a street with a bunch of single family homes, right?
Right. You don't hear it for that reason. We are actually pretty much eliminating new single family zoning and housing.
Well, there's no room
in
for
San Jose
it
and California. Yeah, exactly. That's the reason. It's not because of that reason. It's because there's physically just, it's not going to happen anymore, and there's too much already. So anyway, we should move on. But and that's one. It's just an issue that I don't want to call it intractable, because it's not intractable. We can solve it, but it's just something we're going to keep exploring here on the show and in our local politics. All right. Well, moving right along. Speaking of the downtrodden and the folks who are living in less than quality conditions, folks in East Palo Alto are a little concerned about the water that they're getting out of their tap, and I would be too if it looked like this.
It's a visual that's difficult to look at. The water East Palo Alto residents say they're getting when quality is at its worst.
That's when the pipes are being cleaned out. You usually don't get a notice when they do. Whenever we turn on the water and it's brown, we just have to wait until and let the water run until it's clean again.
The discolored water, just part of the complaints local organization Nuestra Casa collected in a survey that was just published this week. It was part of a larger report done between 2017 and 2021 that aims to get grant money to improve water structure in underserved communities. It found more than 700 East Palo Alto residents saying that they're concerned about their water quality and aging water infrastructure.
Whenever I shower, my eyes are burned. I have a lot of hair loss now. I don't cook with the water. We buy water bottles to drink and use for cooking.
The survey found that more than 75% of respondents buy bottled water for cooking and drinking. 55% did not feel their drinking water is safe. Nuestra Casa says the survey opened up an important opportunity for residents to have their voices heard.
The families are taking the initiative how they can advocate for themselves, because it's important to know what is the next steps for them.
The survey has caught the attention of local leaders. We reached out to the city of East Palo Alto, whose city manager sent us a report that's set to go before their city council on Tuesday. It explains that the city contracts a water operator who oversees quality standards. The actual water received comes from the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. The report says the water has to pass through an old water system owned by the city and also aged pipes owned by the residents, which may lead to the water becoming discolored. They say any water issues can be reported by residents and will be investigated. San Mateo County Supervisor David Canepa says federal and local governments have to step up.
We need to allocate funding so that they can develop a comprehensive plan to fix this aging infrastructure.
Now, in response to the survey, the city says it's holding a public meeting about its water system on November 17th. And then on Tuesday, the city council is set to approve $8.5 million for a new water plan master system. In the South Bay, Zach Fuentes, ABC 7 News.
So that's crazy, because I remember just a few times, but I remember stuff being on my door when I lived in Campbell, just taped to my door. This day, you may need to run your water for a while because we're doing work on the water mains. And those were the only times we had brown water. Right. We were alerted, and it wasn't the city. It was like whatever group was doing the work, whatever company or whatever had their letterhead on it. So right. I think part of this is the city government, because those companies weren't doing that out of the goodness of their hearts. That takes time and costs money. Right. So the city was forcing them to do that. Correct. Or they wouldn't have been doing it. And so just giving people a heads up when something like that's going to happen gives them an opportunity to, you're going to be doing water. I was going to be making, I was going to be cooking that day. And so the people can plan ahead and get some bottled water, or be like, you know what? I'm actually I'll cook the day before. Or, I'll shower before I go to bed because I know they're going to be doing some work on the pipes, and maybe I won't be able to shower in the morning. And then that gives people confidence in the water quality, because they know when the water coming out of their pipes is going to be bad. But not only they know that it's going to be bad, they know exactly why and who is doing the work.
Right. Who is responsible? Yeah, absolutely. And it's no surprise that this is happening in East Palo Alto, right? Where they're getting this kind of, the residents are getting the short end of the stick here. If this was happening across 28 or across 101 in Palo Alto proper, right? It would not be happening there. So only in East Palo Alto. Absolutely, they should be concerned and they should be lobbying for change. But it's just another example, I think, of of equity issues, right? I'm pretty sure Palo Alto is getting their water from around the same sources. So
yeah, and I guarantee the city of Palo Alto steps on some of these companies,
100%,
and makes them do the same thing. Give people notice because again, if you know the water is going to be bad one day, and you're like, oh yeah, you know what? I do remember seeing something about that. Now you don't think the water is bad. Now you think there's people doing work on the pipes.
Yeah. Well, this is like ongoing. Like people are buying like big old jugs of water to cook with, right? So this is something where it's like it's every day. They're dealing with it. So, but they need at least some answers better than oh well, aging infrastructure, blah blah blah. It's like, man, my water's brown, dude. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear anything about that. Like I do know that my the infrastructure in my particular house is aging, and we have hard water, right? I understand. I have expectations, like you said. I know what to expect when I open my tap. I should not be surprised like that with like brown nastiness unless there's some sort of legit explanation for it other than oh well.
Also, like I think where I live, like the infrastructure just isn't that old. I think everything was built in like the 70s and 80s where I lived in Campbell. So aging infrastructure isn't really a thing there.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean most places in the Bay Area too, I think are in a similar place. Well, we'll keep an eye on that, obviously. But speaking of the equity gap, there's now and the debate over housing. Our next, sorry, our docket here. The next story, takes us back to the lovely Tony suburb of Hillsborough on the peninsula, where when we last encountered Hillsborough, the residents were up in arms about the Flintstones house. You recall this and all of the dinosaurs and decoration.
Quite the saga. We talked about it for months.
We did. So this is the same suburb, Hillsborough, and they're a little concerned with how they are being forced to implement and to add more housing to their city because of new state laws. So they're trying to figure out ways to get around it and maintain the character of their community. So we'll hear more about what the mayor especially thinks about this prospect.
Drive along the quiet streets of Hillsborough and you might never know a battle was brewing. Thanks to state law, every city and town in California will soon be required to build a certain number of affordable housing units. While many places are building several forms of housing, Hillsborough wants to fulfill most of its requirement with accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. ADUs are typically small spaces built on private property.
We do not want to put the lives of our citizens at risk through what I would call ill-advised multi-unit high-density units.
Al Royce is the mayor of Hillsborough.
Yeah, you can pause it if you want to.
What do you mean the lives of our citizens at risk? What is it? What does he mean? What risk of what?
Yeah, he's going to get into it a little bit, but it's still very vague. But yeah, I don't necessarily understand where he's coming from. But
I mean, I do.
People might die. If they create more affordable.
I understand.
What's the issue?
Black people live in apartments in dense areas. It'll be the inner city. The councilman.
That's right. And they would like kill all the white people and take their women.
It would destroy the character of our city because there would be too many people. The water traffic. Fuck. Buses. Would buses start showing up here?
I think it has something to do with building on hillsides and like the potential for disaster, but you can let the mayor explain for himself. I don't want to put words in.
The lack of land available for development make it difficult to build other.
Did you see when they said the lack of land available for development, and while they were just panning across this giant field
park? Yeah.
Housing. Royce tells ABC 7 News, in addition to those concerns, many people in Hillsborough also want to preserve the town's unique character. That view seemed to be echoed by many who showed up for public comment at a town meeting Monday night.
Please do not give in to the pressure of having a gun to your head by the state or by activists.
But not everybody agrees with Hillsborough's proposal, and some housing advocates say they don't even think it will get approved by state regulators.
To my knowledge, no municipality in California as of yet has had a plan that is, so overwhelmingly comprised of ADUs approved by the state.
Jordan Grimes is a housing advocate in the peninsula. He believes as it stands, Hillsborough's proposal does little to address the region's housing crisis and says most units will probably be difficult to rent out.
There's no way to ensure their affordability. It really is, unfortunately, just a way to try and skirt those state requirements.
Hillsborough has until January 30th to submit their proposals and make any changes that may be required by the state. If they fail to meet that deadline, the town runs the risk of facing thousands of dollars worth of fines every day. In Hillsborough, Tim Johns, ABC 7 News.
They just don't, can't they just build some fucking apartments?
Don't give in to the gun held to your head by the state or the activists. It's not a gun to your head. It's called the law. It's actually the law that you have to comply with. You actually have to do this. We talked earlier about cities like Saratoga pulling their weight, right? You're all now required. They're required to do it, and every city like Hillsborough and Saratoga is looking for ways to not do it, right? To not densify, to not create more, right? To do just enough, right? Just enough.
And again, going back to like the first city we talked about, as a former resident of Campbell is a desirable place, and there is plenty of dense housing to go along with the single family housing. There are, it's not necessarily affordable in all cases, but throwing in like an Avalon in Hillsdale isn't going to ruin Hillsdale. Even though that's not going to really be affordable housing, like just throwing in a few apartment complexes with the requisite amount of affordable housing isn't going to do anything to Hillsborough. And I think the affordable housing thing is like, what it would be affordable housing in Hillsborough, it would be an extremely different rent number than in, say, Shasta County. It's based on like the existing conditions in the area. That's how the affordability is determined. And so there's still not, it's not going to be like cheap housing. It's just going to be like some of these people who live in Hillsborough, their kids are going to be able to afford to get an apartment in Hillsborough later after they finish college. They can come back and move to Hillsborough and get an apartment.
Well, that's who's going to be living in all these ADUs, Producer Dave, is everyone's grandma, uncle, son, daughter, cousin, right? It's not going to be like, they're not going to go down to the shelter and say, hey, bro, I've got a free ADU in my backyard. Do you want to come live with me? That's why it's going to get rejected if it's just ADUs, because it's not inclusive. It's not a situation where you're really being welcoming or you're really doing anything to solve the problem, because those are just going to be expensive ass units. And yes, you're right. Like there's gradations within affordable housing. There's extremely low income. There's there's low income, extremely low income, and so you can still end up with places that are not all that affordable in the greater scheme of things. Like if you were coming from the Midwest or somewhere, you'd probably freak out. But it's affordable for here. It's affordable for Hillsborough, right? But yeah, I agree with Jordan, the activist from Peninsula for Everyone. This will probably get rejected by the state if they try to pull something like that. But I do like the notion that it's life or death. Housing is a life or death situation.
Not for nothing, like Mountain View's dense, and it's a desirable place to live. Like,
oh, absolutely, and getting denser.
It keeps getting denser. Sunnyvale's struggling with this, but Sunnyvale, you don't see people freaking out in Sunnyvale. What you see is apartments and condos getting put up in Sunnyvale.
Sure, you do see some people, right? And you see the same. The thing, my issue is, you see the same people in every city. Every city has their NIMBYs. Every city has NIMBYs. And the question comes down to, you've got elected officials who make these decisions in the final analysis, right? The staff and the city staff that work full time on this, they know what to do. They know what the problem is. They've come up with great solutions generally, right? Like they're the idea people. They're ready to implement, but they can't implement without the political will from the city council or from the leadership, right? And if the leadership is swayed by the small, fringe minority of people who are just really loud, right, and wave signs and make threats, if they're swayed by them and they don't listen to, common sense or the greater good, then yeah, we get stuck and we don't get we don't get solutions. We don't get to where we need to be because we just get behind. So it's held up by these folks that feel like they're they're the ones with the gun to their head from the activists and the NIMBY activists, not from the housing advocates. And that's why we're not making progress, right? Everyone says they want to solve it, but no one wants to actually do it.
I mean, also, like, the people who call themselves YIMBYs could do a little bit better job of not being fucking annoying.
Yes, that's also true. That's also true. Both sides can be a little bit fringy and a little bit extreme, and I think what we need is more rational. But the problem with government, of course, is that the people who are most rational, the people who really have, quote unquote, I keep saying common sense, even though it's a trigger word right now in the mayor's race. But honestly, like they have just a basic understanding of how things work, right? Most of those people just go about their lives and they don't get engaged one way or the other, right? They're like, okay, fine, nothing's really going that bad. They're the people who would say, well, we're on the right track, right? I guess I'm fine, right? We don't hear from them, we don't engage with them, we don't consider them, and yet they're the ones that vote, right? And they're the ones that do all the things. So it would be beneficial, I think, to put into context when you hear the NIMBYs and the negative Nancys out there and the Karens, put it into context, like how many of them there are and how many people there are out there who are not like them at all, right? And who don't subscribe to that.
And in that story about Hillsborough, you heard from people complaining about the city council, but they didn't have anybody from Hillsborough who was like, well, if this is what we have to do, this is what we have to do. Our community needs to adapt, and I've grown up here, and this is a good place, and I'd like to, I'd love it if more people could live here. Like, you don't hear from that person, because that doesn't, what is that? If it bleeds, it leads. That don't bleed.
Yeah, it's not sexy on the news, right? You can get that person it would be good to get that person to show up to public comment, right? It would be good for the activists to get, like, the YIMBYs who are annoying, get those people to show up for them and give their talking points. That would, I think, come across a little better too. But yeah, we absolutely need more people who are like, I've lived here for 50 years and I absolutely want this in my community, right? Because I'm sick and tired of hearing I've lived here for 50 years and this is not the San Jose I grew up.
Right. Somebody needs to go up there and just be like, I've lived here for 50 years just like you have, and I'm not crazy, and I don't think the town's never going to change.
Right. Right.
Where's that person, right? Where's the person who's like, it's delusional to think that this place will never change. What are you talking about? Like, where?
They exist. They're out there somewhere.
Just cities that have, like, there's just cities that have just rejected NIMBYism. Fremont, California rejected it too. Fremont used to just be all single family homes. Now there's apartment complexes everywhere.
Right.
It was a big deal for them to build a downtown and build dense housing. They still haven't finished it yet because it's not because people are opposing it. It's just because they suck at it for some reason.
Yeah.
But over by BART, there aren't any single family houses next to BART anymore. It's all, dense. And they're like low rises too. They're not just like 2 stories. They're like low rises. They're like mid rises and stuff. And so you can see communities where it's the NIMBYism, at least in certain parts of town where it makes sense, like next to the transit hub, the NIMBYism has just been rejected and dense housing has gone in. And with that dense housing comes opportunities for commerce, business, coffee shops, restaurants. Like, how do you think nice restaurants show up somewhere? They don't show up somewhere just because there's a few rich people there. They show up there because there's a lot of people there. And that once you get enough people somewhere, even if it's not a super rich area, there's going to be enough demand for like a nice restaurant to come in, because
there's
then there'll be enough people that have enough special occasions or whatever. I don't think that, I don't think these people get it. It's just so crazy. It's so crazy. And this Hillsborough thing it's like the perfect example. There might be places where it's not going to work. Like, we've been to a couple times. We've been to Ben Lomond. I don't know how they would build an apartment complex there, right? Like a big apartment complex in Ben Lomond, but that's because it's like in the middle of the mountains.
Well, and the numbers they're going to have to meet these state standards are nowhere near that, right? They'd probably have to build like 3 extra units because it's because it's of the nature of the town, right?
Right.
Whereas Hillsborough it's not like it's some up in the mountains somewhere, right? It's
right off the freeway.
It's right through. It's in the middle of Silicon Valley to some extent, right? So it's there are different.
Right. Don't move to a megalopolis if you don't want to live in a megalopolis. Sorry.
Oh, but I moved here before it was a megalopolis.
Oh, well, again, it's delusional for you to think it's never going to change.
My great grandpappy bought this house.
Panning for gold.
Panning for gold. My granddaddy planted this tree.
Well, speaking of places with a bunch of obnoxious rich people, we're going to talk about, we're going to do a follow-up on the Los Gatos sex party mom. Just real quick, this mom was, you know how like when you were a kid, there was like the cool parents where they'd let you smoke weed, maybe in their garage or even in their living room. Well, this lady took that to the extreme, and she had like full on sex and blow parties for like
little extra.
For the popular kids at the school. So she wanted to be the popular kid, but she was a mom. It wasn't even necessarily for her kids' friends. She wanted it to be a status thing for you to get invited to a party at her house when you're in high school and she's a whole ass adult.
Well, it could also be that she was trying to get her son or her child more status, right? Too, right? Like make it be in the stage in the cool parties to get him on the everyone's radar. Anyway, so she's back in court and pleaded not guilty. Wouldn't you believe?
I'm stunned.
I'm shocked.
Out of control parties for underage teenagers just appeared before a judge in San Jose to enter a plea. NBC Bay Area's Barbara Dell was inside the courtroom this morning. What does she have to say?
Well, good morning to you, Laura. Yes, Shannon O'Connor did enter a plea of not guilty in Department 44 in the Hall of Justice behind me here in San Jose. This is video from earlier this morning of O'Connor in the courtroom with her attorney. She's been in jail for the past year after authorities arrested her in connection with what they say were alcohol-fueled sex parties for young teenagers at the home she once owned in Los Gatos. The district attorney has charged O'Connor with dozens of crimes, including child endangerment and sexual battery, stemming from allegations she encouraged and watched sex acts among the younger-aged kids. One young victim was at the hearing this morning and turned down an opportunity to address the court. Afterwards, we did speak with a mother who says her daughter was victimized by O'Connor when she was just 14 or 15 years old.
She has good days and bad days. I'm trying to let her be a regular teenager. I'd like her to forget about all of this, but we can't, right? Because we have to make sure that this woman is accountable for the crimes she committed and the people she manipulated and hurt and took advantage of. And they were all children, including her own. She's a real monster. She is a menace to society. She is a master manipulator, and she should not be on the streets.
We asked O'Connor's attorney off camera what his defense will be for his client. He said he isn't willing to present that to us at this time. The parties allegedly took place in 2020. O'Connor wasn't arrested until last fall after she had moved to Idaho. In February, the judge ruled she should remain in custody until her case concludes. O'Connor's next court appearance is scheduled for December 12th. January 23rd is when the preliminary hearings will begin. Reporting live here in San Jose, Bob Riddell, NBC Bay Area News.
Yeah. Did you see the other lady? She's like, eh.
Yeah, and Laura Garcia, just as backstory, Laura Garcia has teenage children too, so that's the anchors. That's a little rough for her.
I mean, she's right. She's right.
Yeah, she's absolutely right. No, and I mean, I love this plea of not guilty because it might be a little bit hampered by the fact that I believe when she went to Idaho, she also hosted drunken sex parties and was busted in Idaho, or at least maybe living in under assumed name or squatting or something like that. There was some sort of bust in Idaho that happened that caused her to be extradited back here. I think she was having drunken sex parties there too, so it's not like that's going to help her case. I was it was just an isolated incident. I was just trying to do a thing in Los Gatos. I was trying to make Los Gatos great again.
So the fact that she entered a plea of not guilty and there hasn't even been preliminary hearings and stuff, that's actually not uncommon. There may be negotiation going on. The fact that the lawyers weren't to the press, oh, our defense is going to be exactly this. That's what, of course.
Yeah. There's more likely some talking happening. But I don't know if she has a pot to piss in, frankly. So we'll see if the state's willing to play ball and just to get it expedited on behalf of the victims, right? But I imagine the victims and the parent, that one mom is definitely not interested in going light. She's ready to hang this woman in the public square.
Yeah, I just don't understand. There's, I mean, my parents were fairly lenient on that kind of stuff. They didn't. They mostly just didn't want me and my friends out driving drunk and shit. So if you're gonna do this, I guess you're gonna do it here in the garage.
Yeah, right.
And then,
Like you said.
don't let your friends leave here drunk, but they weren't like out there being like, here, have some Jello shots, go take your clothes off, like, isn't anybody here gonna fuck,
Right.
They were like more
Who
like,
can I watch?
they were more like apprehensive about the whole thing, but like engaged in harm reduction because they knew me and my friends were drinking and smoking weed and shit. And so like, that's like the cool parents. And this lady was just like, this lady was the problem. She wasn't doing the harm reduction. She was doing the harm.
Yeah, I must be entertained. Who's going to fuck while I watch?
Oh my God.
Well. So to be honest with you, I actually hope that the plea sticks and that that we go to a full on courtroom battle over this. Because I really want to hear. I do want to hear that.
I hope they.
I'm sorry for the victims, but I do want to hear the
I hope they live stream the trial like they're doing with Alex Jones. This would go national so quick if it was live streamed. People would be just glued to it.
I do absolutely feel bad for the victims, and I wouldn't want them re-victimized by any means. But yeah, that they would be very interesting to get more detail out of the story of what actually happened and how this went down, because the local news is never going to probe and find it out for us. So it's going to take a courtroom battle.
And this is definitely this is definitely something to keep an eye on. The progress is going to be slow, but this story is so shocking that anytime anything happens in this story, the local news is going to pick up on it. We
could almost do it maybe a separate like serial down ballot about this one story.
Yeah, if we had time, that'd be like once it concludes, that's not the worst idea in the world, because it'll be a couple years till it's done, so your baby won't be so small anymore, and maybe you'll have a little time.
A little short run series or whatever they call those things now.
A serial show,
a serial podcast. All right. Well, hey, we do need to move on. And someone needs to get their shit together. And apparently, it's a bunch of these big corporate campuses around the South Bay that are skirting. Yeah, right. They're skirting their water conservation pledges, and the water police are going to start to crack down.
Valley Water knows that the first few weeks will be an educational period for them, letting business owners know what the new rules are, and they hope it doesn't get to the point where they have to start issuing fines. The areas around San Jose's high-tech corridor is surrounded by beautiful, lush green grass. The only problem is that grass, called decorative landscaping, is supposed to be turning brown by this point. That's because on September 13th, Valley Water put these areas on their water ban list, meaning it could issue fines if a company doesn't turn off the sprinklers.
We do have people that call us and tell us that X number of businesses are not complying.
In fact, our camera spotted this on North 1st Street one morning. Sprinklers on.
I know exactly where that is. It's fucked up, but I've worked over there so long that I know exactly where that is. It's like, I don't know what the name of the company is, but it's between like Tasman, where Aptina is, and that old hacker building. Anyway, I know exactly where that is.
Company was aware of the new rules. The office manager told me she was not, and alerted her property manager, who said they will correct the issue. Valley Water says so far it has received 12 complaints about different properties violating the new rules in Santa Clara County.
Yes, there will be a letter that goes out. Eventually, it could be a knock on the door, and it could get even more severe than that. But we're hopefully that the water district won't ever reach that level.
They might ring the doorbell.
Buildings that have turned to drought-resistant plants instead of grass, like the county government building, also on North 1st Street.
I think it's great.
This shopper says it's great and the way to save the environment.
Oh, it's an ongoing concern. I mean, I went up to Lake Shasta the other day, and I've never seen it so low. I mean, it's real.
Oh, there's a lot of other stuff going on up there, lady.
So Valley Water hopes to see more brown around the county soon as it tries to manage the drought emergency. Damian Trujillo, NBC Bay Area News.
Yeah, this is going to be a pass the buck situation where it's the business owners aren't the ones watering the lawn. It's going to be the property management companies. And these property management companies are oftentimes run by these like international conglomerates. And good luck getting them to give you any money. Like, good luck getting them to pay the fine.
Absolutely. I've often wondered how these things are set and what kind of metering is happening, what kind of timers are set, because you'll see these sprinklers go off on these campuses and people's lawns too, individuals' lawns at like 4 p.m. in the summertime, right? At the height of the heat of the day, right? It's just water's like evaporating before it even lands on the grass. And you just wonder what is possessing you to do this now? Are you even monitoring this at all? Do you even understand what's happening? Do you know that you're watering your park strip right now? Most people might not. Who knows? But yeah, it's absolutely going to be a pass the buck situation. Oh, we didn't know. Oh, well, we didn't know. Oh, well, we didn't know. And someone knew. But, we may never find out. As long as the water gets shut off, though, that's probably the most important thing. But they're going to start knocking on doors soon. Watch out.
That's not going to really help, though, right? Like when we were in a big park on O'Toole, big office park on O'Toole, that's a frontage road along 880, off of North First, kind of by Brokaw, where the old Fry's was over there. And I couldn't tell you, like, if the grass was green in front of like where our office was and somebody from the city knocked on our door, I'd just be like, I don't know. Here's the property management's phone number. I don't turn on the sprinklers. I don't. Yeah, this isn't
it's not my thing, bro.
Like
we're renters.
I totally agree with you. I don't think the water should be running. Nobody even like. We don't like have a picnic out there. It's in front of our office. There's no use for the grass there except for it to look pretty.
Right.
And so it's going to be a situation where they're going to pass the buck. And eventually when the buck stops, it's going to be some lawyered up company that's just not going to pay the fine and isn't going to stop watering the lawn.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the county is terrified. The county is terrified of those companies probably.
Oh, sure. They also have campaign contributions that they make too. So don't forget about that.
Yeah, so like this
49ers.
The Bucks, they're gonna like some poor maintenance guy for one of these places is gonna be the fall guy, right? And he's like he or she or whatever is gonna be stuck, with the city telling them one thing and then the property owner being like, well, we can't have the property look like shit because it's bad for business, and then they're stuck in the middle. But what that person should do is, I don't know, if they can just be like, well, that's great. I'm no longer your maintenance person. Water the lawn yourself, asshole. But most people aren't in a position to really do that. Rent being what it is.
They kind of need like 3 jobs to afford the rent.
Right. So
can't lose any one of them.
So yeah, I don't. Unfortunately, that's the easiest place to like cut water usage is going to be at businesses, and I think like some of these like these smaller like community small strip malls or whatever are going to obey the rules because the people who own it are probably like local developers, like little place with like 7 or 8 shops and maybe 7 or 8 shops and a Safeway or whatever. They're gonna obey the rules. But these massive office complexes where nobody that works there cares if the grass is green or brown, those are going to be the places where they're not going to follow the rules. When you go to the Safeway might, they should still turn off the water, but they'd be like, hey, they have like a reason, be like, hey, it's better if it's inviting, right? Not that they shouldn't turn off the water, but they have more of an argument. Whereas an office park, nobody's shopping there. Everybody's going there to work.
And people aren't so much going to work there anymore, right? At least not as often. But they can, like the big companies also can afford the fines, right? If they actually decided to start fining people and start cracking down, they could afford the fine. Whereas a mom and pop or like someone, like you said, the owner of a small strip mall, right? They're not necessarily going to be able to afford that fine, right?
Or even if they can't afford it,
they're going to comply.
Even if they can afford it, they don't want to afford it.
Yeah. No, true. Very true. It's just another burden, right? So, please, for the love of God, everyone, turn the damn spigots off. Let it go brown for a minute.
Save the water.
Save the water.
Take your shower. Do your thing. Like whatever.
Yeah, we're down to like 1 shower a week. Most of it's because of just timing. The baby just demands. The baby demands, but it's also helping. Our water bill has been almost non-existent lately. So even with higher rates, so good on us.
Yeah, I think the street I live on, funny enough, there's not a lot of lawns. It's a lot of rocks and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Mostly rocks and brown stuff and native plants and whatnot. I've been over there.
Yeah,
it's a nice neighborhood.
That's pretty. It's pretty cool. I like I just noticed it the other day. I'm like, you know what? There are a lot of rock gardens here.
Yeah, that's what we got. We've going on mostly in our front yard, and then we let the lawn go in the backyard. So we're still figuring out what to do. We'll probably do some gardening work and maybe some planter boxes, some vegetables. It'll be exciting. I'll send pictures.
We're going to move on to Down Ballot Watch now. This is where we cover stories that are not just mostly political, but like completely 100% political. They're about local politics, local governance, a lot of stuff about the police, a lot of stuff about the county and city government. And up first, we got San Francisco. We're going to go to San Francisco. They got a new DA. And apparently, as is sometimes the case, people don't like what the new DA is doing.
Right? The new DA? Where we heard this before.
Brooke Jenkins was appointed as San Francisco DA after voters overwhelmingly recalled Chesa Boudin back in May. She is running in the November election to keep her seat.
Yeah, this is one of the policy changes that she has announced since getting into office. Now, some are skeptical about Jenkins' new approach to fentanyl dealers, including the Public Defender's Office. Anita Naba is managing attorney in the felony unit at the Public Defender's Office. Thank you so much for being here. As we all know, the city is dealing with a drug overdose epidemic. Why is this not a good strategy? I mean, it's being used successfully elsewhere.
Thank you for having me. And I would beg to differ about that last comment. It has not been really used successfully elsewhere, and there are a lot of states that have pursued this failed experiment and are showing that these types of prosecutions don't deter, they do not reduce the demand for drugs, and they do not increase public safety. The prosecutions aren't going to target the kingpins, the high-level dealers. What we're seeing in our courts day in, day out are the same vulnerable, poor Black and brown community members that are relatively low subsistence dealers that are being prosecuted.
I understand you also believe that a policy shift like this is likely to have some unintended consequences, including potentially deterring people from helping others who might need medical attention. Explain what your concerns are.
Yes, I mean, I think that's true. I think that, the idea that we're going to target high-level dealers that are multiple levels removed from the person that is actually overdosing it's just unrealistic, and they know it's not true. Most likely, the people that get targeted are the people that are with the addicted person when they are sick and when they are overdosing, and who are not going to want to call 911 or take someone to the hospital if they know that it's going to result in police scrutiny and police involvement.
Not for nothing, real quick. Like, look at this public defender's office. Like, she's got a rolling closet behind her with her court clothes. Like, she's probably sharing this office with another person. Like, shout out to public defenders, because this is probably a highly competent person that could be working at some law firm and has chosen to have a rolling closet in a tiny office that she probably shares with someone else. So shout out. And she's like, she appears, they said she was like some mucky muck kind of in the public defender's office too. She was like higher up. So shout out to the people working in the public defender's office, like for real.
Yeah, she's in the felony division, so she's leading pretty much a whole department of the department.
Okay, but what about this idea that if you have someone who is selling fentanyl, those that look like candy or what have you, to a teenager, and that teenager dies, what is the problem with going after the person who sold that teenager that deadly lace drug?
It is. I have seen the stories in the news, and I am the mother of 2 young children, and I think it's absolutely tragic the deaths that we have seen. But what we're seeing in the interim district attorney's policies is not a policy that's going to realistically target some of the extreme cases that we're following in the news. What we're watching every day in our courts is vulnerable indigent communities, Black and brown people in the Tenderloin, who are largely selling drugs as subsistence dealers, some of them supporting their own drug habits, who are being caught up, over-criminalized, and over-prosecuted in our system.
Obviously, you understand the court system better than most of us do. From a practical standpoint here, how challenging is it going to be to actually prove that this drug dealer sold the drugs that led to this person dying from an overdose? Do you?
I think it's going to be extraordinarily challenging to make that leap of connections. It's extremely attenuated, the types of cases that we see at 850 Bryan on a day-to-day basis. And I think that it's political grandstanding. And while people in our communities want answers and want solutions, our clients who are dying on the streets want solutions, this is not where we should be targeting our very, very scarce resources.
Okay, before I let you go, so you don't think that this would be enough of a threat to deter any sort of criminal behavior and prohibit those from dealing fentanyl?
I don't, and I think that we know this from 50 years of living through the war on drugs, that ratcheting up penalties, escalating jail time and prosecution has not been an effective deterrent to ending the public health crisis that we see in our streets.
All right, we have to leave the conversation there. We appreciate your time. Anita Naba, managing attorney in the felony unit at the Public Defender's Office in San Francisco.
Managing attorney in the felony unit.
Seriously.
Thank you.
She's like, shout out to whoever, shout out to that lady. I forgot her name already, but like
Anita Naba. And yeah, shout out to her she had the desk fan too, right? Like, could probably no AC in her office either, right? So she's rocking the desk fan on a 90 degree day in San Francisco. So yeah, more power to her, and God bless all the public defenders. I believe Tessa Boudin, who was the previous district attorney who was recalled, was from the public defender's office originally. One of our local former council members, now assembly member, Ash Kalra, was a former public defender. And you can see the through line in their policy setting and their policy making too, that mentality of looking out for people and trying to defend the public, right? You see that mentality. You do not see that in this current, as Anita put it, interim district attorney. This is more of that tough on crimes kind of attitude that you saw during the war on drugs, and it's for good reason. It's designed to attract a certain populace to vote for you. But at the end of the day, is it really the right approach, or again, who's going to have the political will to be the true progressive and to look at this from the ground level? And you absolutely cannot prosecute the drug dealer for the drug overdose. Are you kidding me? Like, they're usually, the dealer's not the one producing the drug or masterminding the entire operation, right? They're just a middleman or middle.
And the big traffickers are oftentimes like hooked in to the system in certain ways.
Yeah, completely.
And they're not going to get caught because they have the ability to not get caught, because they never know where the money is. They never know where the drugs are. They're just the trafficker, and they just like skim some of the money off the top. And so, yeah, and that's I don't like the word good, but I guess it's a good place to be in that system, because your hands never get dirty and it's harder to bust you.
Yeah, and usually not black or brown, right? Those are the white folk that are up there, and then she's exactly right. It's the black and brown folk that are selling the drugs and doing the drugs and dying from the drugs, right? There's nothing good about this entire situation. And you're right. The only people that are making out are the people at the top. They're not good. They're not going to jail, and they're making plenty of money, tons more money than the drug dealer's making, right? Drug dealers just subsiding, right? Like she said, this is substance kind of employment. They're just making enough money to survive. The cartels are making money hand over fist, and people are dying. So,
right. And it's just, there's always some panic, right? I don't know if you remember, there was a panic over DXM for a while, because people were dying from DXM because it was in ecstasy pills. And it's always something. And it's at the production level where people are putting this or that into their batch to make it stronger without having to produce the more expensive product that people are trying to purchase.
Yep.
And that's why they're talking about rainbow fentanyl. Those are e-pills. And some of those e-pills have fentanyl in them, because some of the people making those e-pills are horrible people, but they're not the ones at the fucking party, they're not the ones, they're fucking 4 degrees separated from the person, even from the person who you even buy it from.
Mm-hmm. So very true. It's incredibly fraught.
Like climbing that ladder by finding like the very person at the very bottom of that ladder is real tough.
Absolutely. And no one's going to be willing to, not many people are going to be willing to give up the next person up, right?
Right, because that's usually their friend.
Based on fear. Yeah. Based on fear and friendship and loyalty and money. Woo. Well, we'll be following that. And like I said, the interim DA has to defend herself in an election coming up, but she doesn't have really strong opposition at this point. So more than likely getting reelected. So this is not going to be the end of that story, though. Guaranteed. Well, coming back down to the South Bay and corruption in law enforcement, our sheriff is finally on trial in a corruption trial, which is not a criminal trial. But they're trying to take her down for a few things, and she's now in court, and testimony is being heard, and we're going to hear a little bit about that.
The first witnesses took the stand today in the civil corruption trial against the South Bay's top cop. This may not be a criminal trial, but the stakes are still high. If found liable, Santa Clara County's Lori Smith would be immediately removed from office and barred from holding any other public office again. NBC Bay Area's Damien Trujillo was in the courtroom for the first day of testimony.
Not many people in the gallery on this first day. Observers say the sheriff has a tough hill to climb because you only need 9 of the 12 jurors to find her liable. Santa Clara County Sheriff walked into the courthouse alone this morning. How you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Inside the courtroom, jurors heard from this woman. Linda Wallace testified that she was secretary in the sheriff's office who processed CCWs, or concealed weapon permits. Sheriff Lori Smith faces 5 counts of willful and corrupt misconduct for allegedly giving those permits to campaign donors or VIPs.
Ma'am, what's it like to testify in front of the sheriff? I'm sorry, no comment. Sorry.
Wallace said she created a spreadsheet with all the CCW applications that came in and believed only she and the public information officer handled those applications before the sheriff either approved or denied them. That public information officer is Sergeant Rich Glennon. Glennon told the jury that along the way, more people began handling those applications, including the sheriff herself, Lieutenant James Jensen, and Under Sheriff Rick Sung. Both Sung and Jensen are now facing criminal charges connected to those accusations. Glennon testified that the applications the sheriff approved in his time there were mainly for VIPs like professional athletes and business owners.
Sir, was it abnormal the way the CCWs were being processed during your tenure?
I'm not going to comment.
With the liable verdict, the sheriff, who was not running for re-election, would lose her job and would be barred from holding public office again. One court observer, who didn't want to be identified, said the trial is pointless.
So far, what I've seen with the opening arguments and this first witness, I would say that this is a big waste of time, and this is going to come out a big nothing at the end of the day.
Jaime Leaños is an expert in civil litigation and says it's not a waste of time for prosecutors.
That if you do something wrong while you're in office, you will be held accountable for your actions. Regardless of the fact that it's at the beginning of their career or the end of their career, the fact of the matter is when people make mistakes and they cross the line, they're going to go after you.
The trial is expected to last a month. Damien Trujillo, NBC Bay Area News.
I like the court observer. They were like, nothing's going to change.
Yeah, this is nothing. I'm just here to like hang out and get some free coffee.
I admire their cynicism, though. I mean, I think cynicism gets a bad rap, and I think cynicism is a good way through which to view the world. If it's almost the end of her career, she can't hold office again, and they didn't mention it. Do you know if she's going to still be able to pull a pension?
That's a fantastic question. If she's convicted, I don't know. I would say no, but I don't know that for sure. But she definitely will if she's not convicted. Pretty hefty one too, because the sheriff makes quite a bit of money, and it's all based on your last year and years of service. So, and she's been there for I think 4 terms now, so quite a while. And she was a sheriff's deputy before, so she's probably racked up a pretty decent pension.
Well,
I think she was a deputy.
Well, we'll keep an eye on this. I kind of am with the cynical court observer who thinks nothing's going to happen. But yeah. It would be nice if something did happen, because it might prevent people from doing this, because it's kind of hard to get a concealed carry. And if like you have like let's say you're in a situation where you're being stalked, or you're being maybe cyber stalked and you're worried about it escalating, or you have a domestic abuse situation or whatever, and you're trying to get that concealed carry because you're like, you want to be able to maybe just the fact that the person stalking you knows that you have the concealed carry might prevent them from trying to inflict violence on you or whatever. And then you find out that like some mucky muck at Apple got it because they are, a mucky muck at Apple, then you're going to be pissed.
Sure. Absolutely. In a way, it has killed her political career, right? Like she was going to run for re-election, and stay in office ostensibly for a while. So this and other things have certainly conspired to kill her political career. She backed out of the race, right? So she sort of tanked her own career, as it were, as opposed to having to resign in disgrace because she just kept pressing the issue. And I thought actually she would just keep pressing it. So I was surprised that she did step down at the end of the day. But yeah, that will maybe help a bit. What would really help is sending some of these fuckers to jail at some point for doing crimes, right? Whether it's Donald Trump or it's all the way down to Lori Smith, or former Supervisor Shirakawa, who was who left office in disgrace, other council members in San Jose who've left office in disgrace because of corruption. If they break the law, they should do the time or pay the fine. And that's what will really deter people. This kind of thing will happen again. It will happen again because people are stubborn and they figure, oh, well, if it's not going to ruin my life, if all it does is kill my political career, and that's the worst thing that happens, I'll be fine with that. I'll have a good time. I'll be honorable for a few years. I'll get invited to all the parties, right? And at the end of the day, I can just retire and not really, have too much of a blemish on my tombstone.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's move up the peninsula to Daly City, where it appears that there was an assault that happened against a council member, and the assault was apparently perpetrated by a council member. Seems
correct.
Seems
correct.
Seems bad. Let's see what's going on here.
Very downballot-y.
Daly City Council member Jocelyn Manolo says the incident happened in one of the conference rooms in City Hall just a few hours before the City Council meeting this Monday. She says Council member Pam DiGiovanni was in a room by herself when Jocelyn walked in.
It was really quick, and she said, I'm in a meeting, and that's when she had slammed a door on me.
Manalo says she was stunned and walked to the city manager's office nearby. They called paramedics. Manalo shared this photo. She says paramedics provided the sling and wheelchair while in transit to nearby Seton Hospital because she was complaining about arm and back pain. Manalo says she was in the hospital for 4 hours and says the whole situation is still a shock.
I just couldn't believe I was in that moment. I could not believe that, I had been attacked by a colleague.
During Monday night's council meeting, Manalo publicly raised the accusation of the assault. DiGiovanni responded.
I vehemently deny that I did anything to assault and that all this is politically motivated, because I would never do such a thing.
The Daly City Police Department has confirmed it is investigating. Manalo has since hired an attorney who sat with her through our interview. She says all options are on the table for possible civil action against DiGiovanni. But this is not the first time the two have crossed paths. Last year, when Manalo was mayor during a heated council meeting, DiGiovanni accused her of a conflict of interest while working with the group teaching AAPI community members self-defense.
It's a conflict of interest. It has nothing to do with the actions. Giovanni, please. You don't cut me off.
Manalo shared a document from the State Fair Political Practices Commission advising her they found no reason to pursue any action against her in this incident. She also described what she claims are 2 other heated exchanges over the last 4 years.
This abuse from Miss DiGiovanni has happened over time. And it has come to a point where it has been violent. And that's why I'm speaking out.
We've reached out to Council member DiGiovanni multiple times through text and phone to talk about Monday's incident and prior interactions with Council member Manalo. So far, no response. DiGiovanni is currently up for re-election. Manalo says she has endorsed 3 of her opponents, who are all running for at-large positions on the City Council. In Daly City, Sergio Quintana, NBC, Bay Area News.
So yeah, you don't slam the door on somebody, like on them.
No, that's probably not advisable. I've had many doors slammed in my face, like metaphorically speaking, but never on my face. So yeah, that's you got to be mindful of that and just be thoughtful, a little more thoughtful, especially in public spaces. Seems like the Miss Giovanni is kind of a bull in the china shop anyway. So I'm not surprised that this kind of thing happened. Is it and the question comes up, is it legit or is it overreacting? At the end of the day, if you feel threatened, then you are threatened,
right?
From my perspective, right? So you got to accept that and just say, like, look, this woman felt threatened, whatever it was, and she felt assaulted. So you have to take that for what it's worth and start with that as your baseline,
right?
But yeah,
like the appropriate thing to do if that happens and you think it's a misunderstanding is to be like, well, I think this is a misunderstanding, and it would be okay if we talked about this, like, sometime.
Let's hash it out. Let's chop it up, right? Let's figure it out. Let's go have coffee chat. Council members do that all the time. Coffee chats with their constituents. What's really a shame, though, is that, like, with all the threats and vitriol coming at our public officials every day, right? Like, it was just on the news that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez spends like hundreds of thousands of dollars every year on just security for herself, right? because of all the threats that she faces every day. And it goes all the way down to school board. They're getting death threats every day. I know a friend on the school board who gets death threats in email, right, or in phone every day. It's a shame that this is happening between colleagues, right, and a fellow council person basically confronting and threatening and intimidating another colleague. That's awful. We deal with it enough with constituents, right? Let's try and keep things on the dais cool. But speaking of the dais and constituents and trying to keep things cool, producer Dave, I'm super impressed that you were monitoring San Jose public comment today. And we have this lovely closing coda. We can even make this another thing if you want to. I don't know if we necessarily have to do the other story, but
so yeah, we're a little long. We don't have a live show tonight, but I feel like the show's going a little long. So maybe we'll do this for and another thing. Shout out to the Media Wench actually for finding this for me.
Very nice. Yeah, this is perfect. This is a perfect coda to the show. So if we want to run this is today's final public comment from today's city council meeting in San Jose, with a frequent flyer, someone who's been trying to, I think, make a name for themselves in these spaces. So let's let it roll.
Walking down the stairs.
Yeah.
Walking up to the
wait.
Sir, don't.
So for podcast listeners, that person just walked up to somebody at the main desk for the city council people, and you're not supposed to do that.
Right. And he approached the city council.
Yeah. Then Sam Liccardo was like, "Sir."
I'm sorry, I didn't. If you just stand at the mic, that'd be great. I didn't know. Okay. I'm sorry. I apologize. No problem. I apologize. All right. So, been here for 33 years. I've never been here in this location. I went to the State of the City address and I saw you, Mayor, and you guys I thank you guys for everything that you're doing for the city, because we need you guys and we need more people participating. Okay. It was my first time I went to the State of the City address and it was amazing. I ran into all kinds of great people. But then I saw an article on Reddit and it said the 3 slowest cities to recover from the shutdown is San Jose, San Francisco, and LA. And I think, San Jose deserves better. And I've got a plan for that. We're the largest city in the Bay Area. We're the most beautiful. We're the safest out of all 3. And I think it needs a marketing plan. I told you that the other day, a week or 2 ago, and I've got that. We're the self-proclaimed city, or capital of Silicon Valley, right? Yeah. Was that passed a law or anything? No, I think it was just self-proclaimed. I think we should be now the San Jose Bay Area, right? Why can't we be the San Jose Bay Area? They've got them Gold Gate Bridge. The cards, I don't know if you can pass those out, but we've got Sandra Day O'Connor in the clouds, in the sky. She's amazing. You know what? She swam with the sharks. She's an amazing woman, set precedences. I've got images in the cloud of a shark above her. Okay? It's amazing what God has given me in the clouds after waking up from an 18-year depression. It's amazing. I have got ideas that I think will put San Jose back on the map. I just need to know who to talk to. That's it. Okay? Thank you. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you, sir. And I'm Thank you very sorry I much. didn't know the protocol. No worries. Have a great day, sir. All right, the meeting's adjourned.
That was wild. You know what, though? That seemed like a nice enough person, right?
He genuinely wants to help. He's got a marketing plan. He wants to. I love the gall of just saying fuck it, let's just call it the San Jose Bay, right? Forget San Francisco. We're the big dog. San Jose Bay Area. I like that. I think that could stick. Maybe. But I definitely like his fashion sense. The jacket was fabulous.
The jacket was great. But what we'd need here first would be some goddamn entertainment, honestly.
That would be a good start. He's very entertaining himself, so maybe we can start with him. I did see him at the State of the City. I was at the State of the City address. I do remember seeing that guy. I had no idea who he was, but now I know. It's fabulous. So maybe he'll show up some more at council meetings now that he's found where to go after his 33 years in San Jose. So with more people like him, I was tempted. I half thought he might announce he was running for office. He's a little late to file, but he could do a writing campaign, I suppose. But we need more people like him, that in public service, I think, who have genuinely care with almost a childlike kind of passion for making our city better. So with that, I think we can safely wrap up the show for this week.
Yep. Thanks everybody for tuning in to Down Ballot. We do the show live most weeks. This week was a record only, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. Check out our swag shop at eplex.shop. And we'll see everybody.
Get vaxxed.
Get vaxxed. We'll see everybody.
Got my booster.
We'll see everybody next week.
Time to get the party started. Pick up my phone just to check and see who's calling. Dress up real nice for the ladies at the bar, and I'm driving in my car just to get to where they are. Here at the local scene is where I plant my feet. It's where I smoke my cigarette and I hold my drink. I look at all my friends, they're all blazing greens. Here at the front of the stage, waiting for MTV. Where are those guys who's standing next to me with a pipe in his hand, ready to blaze for me? About 5 minutes later, we're all singing Queen. I get the fuck up on stage and rock the scene, yeah. We do what we want, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. We do what we want, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. Enjoy that band. I turn and head back to the bar for a refill, man, because you know where we are. We're headed out to the car to smoke another one and another one. Now just when the magic starts kicking in, I hear relapse playing, you know it's time to head in. Alright everybody, now it's time to grab a new drink. Spark it if you got it and then pass it to me, yeah. We do what we want, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. We do what we want to do, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. Enjoy that band. Last up on the bill for the show tonight is Down and Dirty at 5, so we're headed outside to spark up another joint. Now who's got my lighter? Stoner E, of course. Shouldn't you be inside?
I'm all up in this bitch, being who I gotta be. I'm fucked up like the U.S. economy. The truth is that I don't think logically. Stoner E take you on a psychedelic odyssey. Now inside motherfuckers is rocking me, and outside shit we smoke a lot of broccoli. Rocky the roller, yo, that sexy girl be jocking me. Ain't too drunk to fuck, but I'll probably do it sloppily.
We do what we want to do, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. Enjoy the band. We do what we want to do, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band.
Molly say that he like jamming, and he hope he like jamming too. Well, I gotta say, thank you, Bob, we do. Yes, I gotta say, thank you, Bob, we do. Well, Bob Marley said that he like jamming, and he hope he like jamming too. Well, I gotta say, thank you, Bob.